All right, welcome in everyone to the deep dive. We're going to be doing something a little different today.
Hmm.
We're going to be diving into this project called The Lyot Show.
The Lyot show,
Yeah,
yes.
The Lyot Show from a woman named Lyot Portal.
Okay.
And we actually have a lot of information to go off of here. So, someone sent over a whole bunch of her writings from her Substack, which is called The Lyot Show, a story unfolding across timelines.
Hmm.
And we have like excerpts from like her about page, her archive, specific articles she's written. One is called like From Transit Camps to Triumph.
Wow.
We have one that's called How the Industrial Revolution Transformed Housing and Shaped Modern Cities. And then another one, Israel's Bold Gamble Welcoming a Million Immigrants Amidst Uncertainty.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. And then we even have some notes on how to pronounce Layat's name and her father, Nissim's name.
Oh, okay.
And then she even has some stuff in here about like how podcast hosts should talk about her show and stuff.
Right. Calls to action.
Yeah, yeah. Calls to action. Thank yous to people who have already subscribed. So we have a lot to go off of here. But really our mission today is to figure out, like, what is the Lyot Show? What is it all about? Why would someone like you who enjoys learning new things quickly, very thoroughly be interested in this? And then also, like, what is so unique about Lyot's work? And one of the things that stood out to me are these conversations that she has with her dad, Nissim.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fascinating thread that runs through a lot of this material, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, let's start with just breaking down what exactly is the Lyot show.
Okay.
So, I mean, going through all of this material,
Mm-hmm.
Lyot, she kind of describes it as like a blend of all these different subjects. She
Yeah.
talks about history, music, science, entrepreneurship.
She really does jump all over the place, huh?
Yeah, she does. She does. And like even business, art, food, like personal
Well, it's a
stories.
very eclectic mix.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very eclectic. And it's interesting too because she refers to herself as an
Mhm.
architect,
Mhm.
but not like an architect of buildings
Yep.
or software. She's like an architect of something new,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I I think what she's getting at there is that it's not just about, the information she's presenting,
Mm-hmm.
but it's about the way she's presenting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the audience is like a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a shared experience.
Like a journey we're taking together.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
it's less of a lecture and more of like an exploration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she even talks about like, different episodes from her life, and like weaves them into broader themes, about Israeli culture and all this.
Right. And then there's also the way she releases this stuff is very interesting. It's kind of, she describes it as like almost a live performance, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where
Yeah.
she's like dropping this content in sets
Mm-hmm.
over a few days, focused on certain topics. So,
I mean, it's not just like a stream of consciousness, right?
yeah, no, it seems very, very deliberate.
Yeah.
The way she's going about this, like it's unfolding in real time.
Mm-hmm. Like a story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think she even describes her newsletter as like, flowing like music.
Yeah.
So clearly, rhythm and coherence are very important to her.
Right. 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 And then the other piece of this too is that like it's reader supported.
Yes. Yeah.
She really is relying on subscriptions to keep this going.
It's her livelihood, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. So, we've talked a little bit about the structure of the Lance show
Hmm.
and how it's delivered. Where does this show actually live? Like, where is it online?
Right, right. So she primarily uses a platform called Substack.
Substack, okay.
And for anyone who, isn't familiar with Substack, it's essentially, this platform for writers and creators to publish newsletters, directly to their audience,
Oh,
through email, through a website, And she,
Kind of like a blog.
kind of like a blog, yeah, but it's got more features and more of like, a community built in. And she calls it the home for great culture.
Oh, wow. High praise.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, what's the appeal for her?
Well, she actually says this. She says people have actual conversations on Substack instead of just attacking each other like they do on Twitter.
Right.
So I think she's trying to get at like it's more thoughtful.
Right, more community oriented.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's probably pretty appealing, if you're looking for something that's not just like, fleeting interactions online.
Yeah, it's more a little bit deeper.
Right, right. So, I mean, why would someone join Substack to follow the Layat show?
Well, I mean, one of the key things is that you're directly supporting Layat by doing so.
Right, right.
Like when you subscribe, that's her livelihood. That's what's enabling her to do this work.
Yeah, yeah. And she even says in here, that it's a way to follow every new chapter of my life. and be a part of this extraordinary journey.
Right. She's really inviting people in.
Yeah, yeah, like almost as if she's saying like, hey, come along on this ride with me.
Yeah, exactly. And she really pushes for, um, for subscriptions. In a lot of her calls to action, she wants people to, subscribe to her newsletter, and to support her vision.
Mm.
And she even says that, after one of her recent pieces, over 1,000 people read it and nearly 50 new people subscribed because of it.
Wow.
So clearly she's connecting with people.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, she's finding an audience, which is really cool to see. So, okay, we've talked about what the Liad show is, kind of how it's structured, the fact that it's on Substack. One of the things that was really interesting to me is that she has these conversations with her dad, Nissim.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You see that throughout all these writings.
Yeah, yeah. So what makes these conversations so engaging? Like, why are they unique?
Well, she kind of shares these snippets or excerpts of these conversations with her dad, with you, with the listener, and it's interesting because they talk about all sorts of things. They'll talk about, these historical events like, the mass immigration to Israel and how public housing developed. And then she'll also talk about, kind of her ideas about like the future of education and even some like crazy ideas about like integrating social media into the education system.
Right, right.
So it's a really wide range of things. And I think what's so cool is that you see this intergenerational perspective,
Right.
You've got Liat, who is, very clearly comfortable explaining modern concepts like startups and social media to her 70-year-old father, Nissim.
Yeah.
When I think a lot of people can probably relate to that, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, we've all been there
Yeah.
trying to explain the latest app to our parents,
Exactly, exactly. But I mean, Nissim's not just, sitting there passively. He actually brings a lot to the table. I mean, he's an architect.
Right.
So he has these insights into, discussions about housing and construction.
Yeah.
And you see that, like, especially when they're talking about the early transit camps and the public housing boom and all that, he can provide this historical context, this real world understanding.
Yeah, it's really grounded, you know?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the information, though. I mean, you see, like, a real relationship between them.
Yeah.
They joke around, they'll have, like, disagreements, but it's all very respectful. You can tell they really respect each other. And it's very personal, like, there's this one part where Leah talks about how she was hesitant to even share her education system idea with Nissim at first.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she was afraid of how he would react. Like, she thought it was, like, too crazy of an idea.
Yeah.
So it's very, very human. It's not just like, an interview.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, too, like, it's clear that Liat is learning from these conversations as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And by sharing those with us, we get to learn, too.
Exactly. It's like it's a learning experience for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And I think there's this one point where they're talking about the transit camps, and Nissim actually refers to Liat as his student.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's like he's the teacher, she's the student, but it's also like they're both learning from each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really frames their dynamic in this very unique way.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, obviously with these conversations with her dad, we can't help but see that there are some generational differences between them, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So, like, what are some of the things that stand out to you about how they approach things differently, based on when they were born, their different experiences?
Well, I think the biggest one, honestly, is technology.
Okay.
Like Nissim, he's clearly a little apprehensive about it. He even says, like, could I manage to keep up with all this technology? I barely manage with Facebook and Instagram. And then you have Liat, who's like, totally comfortable with it. She even jokes about having like the superpowers of a tech support and customer success team since 1998.
Right, right. She's like a digital native.
Exactly, yeah. And then another thing is like just their different life experiences, shape how they view history. So like, Nissim arrived in Israel in the 1960s, so he didn't actually live through the austerity period.
Right, right.
But he knows about it through like his in-laws and stuff. And Liat, she's coming at it more from like a historical perspective, reading about it and learning about it.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think too, like, she's got this very forward-thinking approach, like thinking about, the future of education and how that can integrate with social media. And then Nissim, he'll occasionally tease her about things or share these more traditional viewpoints,
Yeah, right.
Like at one point he says, from what I see on the news, Americans don't even learn their own history. Why would they care about ours?
Right.
It's kind of funny, but it also kind of shows like, oh, okay, there's a different perspective there.
Right. A little bit of a generational divide.
Yeah, yeah. But despite all that, they really seem to have this strong bond and this shared interest in learning, which is really cool.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It shows that you can bridge those generational gaps through communication and a willingness to, see things from different perspectives.
Right. So, okay, we've talked about their conversations and all this. She talks a little bit in these materials about, the idea of becoming a founding member or an annual member of the Lewitt Show. So, why would someone do that?
Well, she kind of frames it as an opportunity to help her unlock her potential, to create something really extraordinary. And that your support is what's going to allow her to take this project to the next level. And there's even this one part where they kind of suggest that, if you were an investor, like you would become a founding member.
Wow. Okay.
So, that's a pretty strong endorsement of what she's doing.
Right. Yeah. It's not just about giving money. It's about, being part of something bigger.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not just, giving her money. You're investing in her talent. You're investing in her vision. And I think the idea is that this project, it must come to life.
Right.
And you can be a part of that. And I think, the other thing is that she covers such a diverse range of topics.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we said, she's all over the place.
Yeah. History, music, science, entrepreneurship, business, art, food, personal stories.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but I think the idea is that, there's something in there for everyone.
Right. Right.
And that's what makes it worthwhile to support, on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Yeah. So, she talks about, wanting to get to 1,000 subscribers and achieve a certain level of recognition. Right.
Do you think she can do it?
Well, she's got this focused call to action that talks about a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers for a YouTube Rising Star Award nomination.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And, it's not clear if there's like a specific deadline, like, before Pesach or something.
Right.
But, she clearly wants to get to that number so she can continue writing and really bring the Lewitt Show to life on these different platforms. And she even asks Nissim directly, she says, help me sell tickets to my show. And then she mentions that it's $8 a month. And she wants it to be like the biggest show in the world.
Yeah.
So clearly she's very ambitious.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, how can people, if they're listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to check this out, I want to support her, like, how do they do that?
Well, the main way is to subscribe to her Substack.
Okay.
Her About page and a lot of these other excerpts, they're all encouraging people to subscribe.
To receive her latest posts and to support her work. And, it's $8 a month to subscribe. And then she also mentions that you can get a ticket to the Lewitt Show on Patreon.
Patreon, okay.
For $1 a month.
Okay.
So, that's another option for support. And it's interesting because, in the guidance for the hosts, they mention that all of her content on Substack is currently free.
Oh, okay.
For initial subscribers. So you can check it out, see if you like it. And then, if you decide you want to support her, you can always adjust your pledge later.
Right, right. So, that's a really low barrier to entry.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's smart on her part,
Yeah.
Let people kind of get a taste of what she's all about before they commit.
Right. So, Substack, it's basically a platform, like I said, where creators can publish newsletters directly to their audience. So you can sign up for free and get her insights right in your inbox. Yeah. And then, beyond Substack, she also encourages people to follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Patreon.
So she's really covering all her bases, huh?
She is. And I think, following and rating the show on those platforms, that can really help with discoverability.
Right.
Help her reach a wider audience.
Yeah, yeah. So, she's clearly working hard to get the word out and build an audience. It's interesting. And then the other thing that's really interesting is that she has this thank you note in here.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really remarkable to see the global reach of her show.
It is.
She thanks subscribers from 34 U.S. states.
Wow.
And 86 countries.
That's incredible.
And she lists out a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Just like to show like, hey, I'm reaching people all over the world.
Yeah, it really speaks to to the broad appeal of her content.
Yeah, yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, this is quite a project
It is.
that Lied has created here.
It is.
So, we've talked about what the Liat Show is, the platform it utilizes, her unique approach to storytelling with these conversations with her father, and the ways that, you can connect with and support her.
Right.
So, for someone who's listening to this and they're like, okay, I like learning things, I like, understanding connections between different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
The Leah Show seems to be a really cool opportunity
I think so.
to kind of dive into all these different topics in this
Mhm.
unique way.
Yeah, and if you're intrigued, I mean, definitely seek out, the Lead Show or Lead It Portal podcasts
Right.
on those different platforms like Substack, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Patreon.
Yeah, yeah. And Substack is free
Yeah.
initially, so I mean, that's the perfect place to start.
Exactly. You can check it out, see if you like it, and then if you do,
Yeah.
think about becoming a paid supporter.
Yeah. And, as Leah herself says, by subscribing, you become an essential part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about passively consuming, information. It's about being part of this community, this journey.
Exactly. And it's a chance to support, a creator who has a
Yeah.
very clear vision and a really fascinating way of sharing that vision with the world.
Yeah. All right. So we encourage you to check out the Leah Portal Show or Leah Portal Podcast on any of those platforms.
Mm-hmm.
See what it's all about for yourself and maybe become one of the many listeners from all those different countries who have already tuned in.
That's right.
And I'm really curious to know what stood out to you most about the Leap Show, based on what we talked about today. And what questions did this all raise for you? Hopefully this has given you some things to think about and explore further.
It certainly has for me.
Yeah, me too.